Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for your last video notes review. And we're going to try to get this done as fast as we possibly can today. So we are looking at Chapter 8, Key Issue 3 and 4. We're talking about why do states cooperate with each other. So again, we're talking about
supranationalism.
And why has terrorism increased. We're going to go through that really quick. Understand it. We don't need to go any further. All right? So we're starting off with why do states cooperate with each other. There are multiple reasons. Global organizations were created quite a bit after World War II. And so when we get to that, it comes down to defense, especially during that Cold War period after World War II. And so the cooperative alliances that we see today that serve both defensive purposes or economic services or possible political interests are going to be why they cooperate with each other. So the United Nations, the European Union, the G8 are all versions of these supranational organizations here. When we talk about the United Nations, it was created right after World War II. And it was created, there's 49 states that were included. Today there's 192 member states. And so that is kind of what we look at as being recognized as political sovereign units, the states here. Their goal, obviously, is to keep peace, develop relationships among nations, be a place for them to come and talk and deal with, have a discourse, and actually hopefully compromise and make solve problems and make issues go away, essentially. And they also work on improving global living conditions, which is what they talk about with their millennium terms that we talked about earlier on this year. We talk about the second portion of it. It's comprised of a Security Council and a General Assembly. The General Assembly has all the permanent members in there, the 192. The Security Council has permanent members of the United States, United Kingdom, China, Russia, and France.
Sounds like neocolonialism, doesn't it? Right? Where the power elites kind of maintain power.
And then you've got 10 states that are chosen or elected basically every couple of years.
Rotated in, yes.
There is the United Nations headquarters. Notice it's headquartered in New York City. We talked about that in urban geography a little bit.
World City.
And then we get into the military alliance reasons here. So after the Cold War, and we're not going to go super in depth on this, but after the Cold War, obviously you have the U.S., you have the Soviet Union going at each other during that time period. We had things evolve down into the Soviet Union controlled the Warsaw Pact, which helped control the balance of power.
Eastern European countries.
Yes, created kind of a buffer state between Western Europe and the Soviet Union. And then we had NATO, which was created by the United States, 16 democratic countries together supporting the U.S. and democratic ideals, basically. And they kind of prevented the global aggression of the Warsaw Pact. So they kind of balanced each other out here.
NATO is still a thing, right? NATO is still something that we belong to, and many countries have joined who used to be in the Warsaw Pact and that. And they still do it primarily because Putin, he's a loose cannon.
He's shady.
He's shady. Right. There's NATO now.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can see all these buffer states that acted in there. The Eastern European states are now part of NATO.
And this is the Iron Curtain right in here.
Yeah. There's your balance of power. Again, going way back into 1962 in this case, so anything that's red or reddish was aligned with the Warsaw Pact. Anything that's blue or bluish.
Cuban Missile Crisis is about to happen right there.
Aligned with NATO. Yeah. Yes, and we got Bay of Pigs for sure. Cuban Missile Crisis. Very
on
close.
Its way.
Very close. Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Sheridan.
All right, so we have other ways in which you cooperate. Economically, right, is going to make sense. But we got 4 lesser known, right? So you're going to think about the EU, you're going to think about NATO, you're going to think about the UN as being big things, right, in terms of political with the UN, thinking about militarily with NATO, and you're thinking about economically with the EU. But we also have some of these other ones, right? The Organization of Security and Cooperation, which is, again, kind of a Cold War thing with the Canadians and the Americans, right? There's the OAS, the Organization of American States. This is kind of a Western Hemisphere thing. It's the United States and Latin America, and it's just kind of looking to kind of unify there. The African Union is actually probably the most powerful of all of these, right? And it has the Congress that meets and all of those things, and it's looking to improve the lot of life in Africa. And then you have the Commonwealth, which is what used to be. It's and all of their former colonies, right? And so you'll see
Economic.
52. Yeah, you'll see 52. Yeah, it's a big trade agreement, right?
Yep.
All right, so
there's your British Commonwealth,
right? And you look at that, sun never sets on the British Empire. They say that was the old adage, and it's still kind of true if you look at what it used to be.
It makes a lot of these countries very strong economically because they're still attached to the United Kingdom.
It helps. helps a little bit. All right. So speaking of economic cooperation, right? Understanding that is the most important way to operate, right? That countries would cooperate. So we have another supranational organization in the European Union, right? 27, soon to be 26, I believe, with Brexit happening, right? It's supposed to do all these things. Like, really, it's a big trade agreement. It opens up the borders between the countries in terms of goods to flow through. It created the common currency in the euro, which then there's less hassle there, switching money up, right? And then it also then moves workers, right, and industry from one part of the EU to another. All right. Keep in mind that not everyone belongs. There's Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, although Iceland kind of wants to join.
We also have the former Yugoslavia we
and
talked
these folks
about.
want to get in. Turkey really wants to get in.
But they probably don't qualify.
Right.
They have to bring something to the European Union. They're not going to take anyone.
They're not developed enough, right? They're kind of scrubs, right? Whereas Switzerland, Norway, and Iceland, they would get in pretty much automatically.
And
these are strong economies.
Possibly Scotland. Scotland would probably get in if they were to leave the United Kingdom and rejoin the European Union.
Yeah. Brexit, right? Just cross that part off because
exactly.
they're no longer going to be part of it, right? Real soon, but we've been saying that for 2 years,
Yes.
right? So I say
It's
real
coming.
soon, it's coming, but they just got to figure out how to break up. It's a messy divorce, right? In terms of how do you divorce the economy that's been together for years and years and years. All right, so there's your EU passport. It's like a fast pass at Disney World, right?
Check
You
your
get to walk
bracelet.
through, whereas the rest of us who aren't EU citizens don't get to move. We would spend longer in line. Okay, questions would be asked. All right, on to terrorism.
So when we look at terrorism, guys, we can go through this really quick, I think. We know what terrorism is, right? It's the idea of using violence to intimidate or coerce someone. We talk about the idea of one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So it depends on what your point of view is when we look at terrorism here. But we look at things from bombings, kidnappings, hijackings, assassinations, whatever they happen to be, they fall into this idea of terrorism. We can talk about international terrorism, we can talk about domestic terrorism, whatever it happens to be. It essentially is, to some extent, an act of war. And so when we look at threats of terrorism, you can see terrorism's located all across the world. It's not one specific place that we see more terrorism than the other. And we know some of the major attacks, right? Attacks that have occurred outside the U.S. or in the United States. We see like the World Trade Center car bombing in '93, the Oklahoma City bombing, which is domestic terrorism. We look at 9/11 attacks, obviously, which is more international terrorism. And we get to all these different ideas.
Again, this is living history for us, not living
Not
history
for you
you,
guys,
right?
but yes, we
Everybody,
remember
your
where we
parents-
were. So we
Everybody
remember
remembers
that
where they were when Oklahoma City hit. Everybody knows when 9/11. They know where they were. Exactly, right?
So when we talk about terrorist groups, Al Qaeda is known as kind of the major terrorist group here. They were led by Osama bin Laden prior to his death or his capture, I guess, or his killing.
Execution.
There you go. I like it. By the United States military. But he is the one that perpetrated and kind of led a lot of these terrorist things that have happened throughout the world, not just in the United States, in Europe as well. And again, we talked about fundamental Islam and the idea that it's a very, very, very minute number of people that are involved in Al Qaeda or the Taliban and terrorist threats here. And so when we look at it, it was a global network of independent operatives who were working to create issues, create terrorism.
Didn't like the United States because of Western influence in the culture, and then also the support of Israel in that area. Right?
And so again, Al Qaeda operates all around the globe. It's still operating. You kill off one person and another person kind of takes over. Unfortunately, it's like Hydra.
Yeah.
If we talk about comic books, I mean, not making light of it, but it's a very similar idea to it.
Splinter cells,
Yep.
sleeper cells, all that fun stuff.
Again, there's U.S. military bases worldwide, where countries that we have military bases in, and again, you can look at the places that have also had terrorist threats and where Al Qaeda operates. The two maps are fairly similar.
There you go. All right, so let's talk about again how are some states linked with that. You have Libya when Muammar Gaddafi was involved. Sponsored that blew up a plane in the 80s, and so there was retaliation there. Afghanistan harbored Al Qaeda. That's why we went to war in Afghanistan, not because any of the 9/11 hijackers were Afghani. They weren't. It's because they were helping Al Qaeda. Their terrorist training bases and things like that were happening there. You have Iraq and Iran, right? Claims have been unfounded. That's why we went to war there, is that we thought that they had weapons of mass destruction, right? Pakistan, right, is a hiding spot for Al Qaeda, and again, that's where the American forces took Mr. Bin Laden,
Yes.
right? Did it without, right, Pakistani permission or even knowledge because they knew that they were kind of behind there. So there you have it. There's terrorism, right? Folks, it's been a pleasure having you guys in class.
Great.
Yep.
So keep going, guys. We've obviously got some review stuff for you for the AP exam, so we'll get those things posted as well. And we will have some other videos and things to talk to you guys later on, probably.
All right.
Take it easy. Stay in touch.